lot of you may know Kiersten as a dancer or a great friend or someone who's danced for the Phoenix Suns, but some of you may know her as a wonderful woman of God who's been inspiring the youth and a lot of people. So I was so excited and honored that she was available to be on Coffee with Tara. So thank you for coming.
No problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about yourself. In 3 words, how would you describe Kiersten?
I would say passionate, compassionate, and determined.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're very determined too. You're always a go-getter, and you're looking for ways to serve in the kingdom of God and trying to achieve your dreams with dancing and all that. So that's awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what was life like growing up for you? What was life like in your household?
I grew up in a split family home. When I was in kindergarten, my parents split up. They were never married, and I do remember them fighting quite a bit. So I guess it was weird as a young child. Initially, it was like, oh, I don't want my dad to leave or whatever. But I also understood that it was better for them to be apart. Yeah. And it was really weird because whenever I would go over to my friend's house that had both of their parents around, I thought they were weird.
Yeah.
So it was different, but I'm definitely a daddy's girl. My dad would come and pick me up when I'd be upset with my mom or something, and take me for ice cream or whatever, and he always would say stupid jokes he probably doesn't want this on camera, but if he passed gas, right before he was going to, he would say, "Hey, Kiersten." I'm like, "Yes, Daddy." Can you go check the window? I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Is it raining and thundering outside?" And I'm like, "No." And then he would pass gas. I'm like, "You better check again." So my dad was definitely a funny guy, and I think that's where I probably picked up some of my humorous things. My mom worked very, very hard, and I think that's where I get my determination from. I just remember her working 3 jobs at one time so that we could get into the house that she currently has. Wow. And my older brother, I have an older brother that's almost 12 years older than me. So we didn't grow up together, but I remember always bragging about him because he was great in football. And then I had a younger brother who just was every essence of an annoying little brother that you could think of. That's, I think, pretty much what I could give in a nutshell.
Wow. How do you feel about having a family when you're older? Do you want to have kids?
Oh, yes. I want 3 to 5 kids.
Yeah.
Both of my parents are from small towns, and they both are from big families. My dad is one of 7.
Wow.
And my mother is one of 5.
Do you have a lot of cousins and
yeah, it's crazy. So like I said, my parents split up. I spent a lot of time, actually almost pretty much every summer for a good maybe 15 years of my life, going back to Oklahoma and staying with my grandparents on my mom's side, and was always around my cousins, not so much with my dad's side, which thankfully I'm now as an adult getting more opportunities to build my relationship with that side. But that kind of inspired me because we lived in Arizona and my family lived either in Minnesota or Oklahoma. I always wanted to have cousins to go to school with, or whatever. And I didn't really get that, so I definitely want my kids to have a lot of siblings and to be around family.
Wow, that's similar to me. It's just my aunts out here, my 2 aunts and their kids. So, I feel like family is so important. Growing up, I didn't have cousins or people to hang out with. And I miss that. You go to other people's house and they have huge family barbecues. And I didn't have that either. So I think I would have a lot of kids too, a lot of cousins and stuff like that as well. So I definitely understand.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. How do you feel about relationships and dating, and what advice would you give younger girls?
Good question. Let's take a sip of coffee. Well, I'm currently not dating at the moment. I have finally come to a point in my life as a young woman where I really understand what it means to be content in my singleness. I've always loved God, and I've always had a relationship with Him, but I never really understood what it meant to really let him be first. Like you always hear it and you know would say it kind of like church jargon or whatever, but I didn't really actually put it into practice until probably this past couple of years. And I have a totally different view on it because when I was 18, I got in a really, really toxic relationship. It was abusive in the way that was emotionally and mentally and even spiritually, and escalated into a physical altercation. And so that really messed my mind up for a long time. And I had bad habits. You're not supposed to bring your baggage into a new relationship, but the last relationship that I was in, I still thought very negatively and jumped to conclusions, and that led to a lot of trouble in my last relationship. And I just learned so much about what is a relationship. As a young person, I think especially for young girls, we always think like our goal in life is to get married, like get married, have kids. Yeah, exactly. And so you're like, every boy that you've ever had a crush on, you're like, that's gonna be my husband, we're gonna have 4 kids or whatever, but really understanding, I thought I wanted to be married, and I definitely wasn't even in the right place to be anybody's wife. Because as much as you want a husband, you have to be the woman that your husband is going to need. Because I believe in biblical relationships, and we were meant to be a helpmate, and we were meant to submit into our husband, which a lot of people, and even me, I was like, ooh, what does that mean? Because there's like this stigma about sit in the kitchen and cook and just take care of the kids, and that's not really what submission means biblically. In fact, the word that is used in the Bible is actually voluntary. It's not a command. Wow. And so a lot of people didn't know that. I didn't know that until recently, and just learning what it means to really submit and still be a woman and understand your importance as a woman, but also the importance of a man, is totally changed over the last couple of years. And I'm really starting to begin to understand that and start to accept who I am as a woman. I dealt with low self-esteem and all kinds of different things. I think my advice to young ladies and young men would be to really focus on yourself, because now is the time for you to pursue everything that you can. When you're in a relationship, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, especially as a believer, it takes away from your focus with God. It's in the Bible, it talks about, Paul's like, basically, it's better to be single. Like, it's not saying that marriage is a bad thing, because it's not. It's a beautiful thing. But you'll never have the time or the freedom that you do have now as a single person, to go travel, to study, to get in your books and prepare yourself, and not even prepare yourself for marriage, but prepare yourself to be the greatest you that you can be. And so that would be my advice, is first and foremost, like, get to know who you are, provide confidence in yourself, and then really learn what it means to be in a relationship, because you can make this whole big checklist of the other person that you want, but are you meeting the other person's checklist?
Wow, say that again. I feel like a lot of young girls need to hear that. That is so good.
Yeah, so you have this big long checklist of who you want to be, but you have to remember that someone else has a checklist, and we're never going to meet every check. But you need to know that you need to be the person that someone else wants to be with as well. Work on yourself first.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that there's strength in singlehood. You get so much strength from that. You learn about who you are, and like a lot of us, we want to take things into our own hands and like, I want this and I want that, but we don't seek God and like ask Him to provide what we need, not just what we want. So, we need to seek Him first, and then He'll provide all those other things. So I think that's great advice.
And you can alleviate a lot of pain and hurt if you focus on yourself and you listen to God, because I probably wouldn't have been in that relationship that I was in, it would have saved a whole lot of craziness, but like, glory to God, like He turned that whole situation around. I was able to use that story to touch a lot of other young girls and just prove that you can get out of things like that.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Wow. So tell us something about yourself that would shock most people. I feel like you're basically famous, on social media. All these people know you, and they see you're a dancer, and they have this image of you, but
Yeah.
sometimes social media can be a facade, or it won't show all of us. So it's something that people may not know about you.
Two things. I was actually very, very shy and timid as a young person.
Wow.
I'm completely opposite now.
Yeah.
I got bullied when I was in junior high, which leads to my next thing that most people don't know about me. I'm multiracial. My mother is Black, Native American, and Spaniard, and my father is Irish and Norwegian.
I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
so I'm American. I feel like everybody's mixed with something. But growing up, I stayed with my mom when my parents split up, and I was always with my mom's side of the family. So I was always around my ethnic side of the family. So I just naturally identified with Black culture. And that's what led to me getting bullied, is because when I was in school, I don't look like I'm mixed, you know. My hair is not curly, and my skin is very fair, and they would think that I was a white girl acting Black, and so they'd call me all kinds of names and just pick on me. They called me fake Alicia Keys because I used to braid my hair. And so whenever people would find out, they're like, "Oh my God, you're Black? No way." I'm like, "Yeah, I am, but I'm also A, B, and C, you know."
Yeah.
So,
and that had to be hard, not knowing exactly where you belong. You know, it's like you feel like, you know, you could relate to the Black kids and then the white kids, but then you're never Black enough, or you're never white enough. So then it just leaves you there alone. So that had to be very tough for you.
I think that definitely played into my identity issues, and probably my insecurities as well. I felt like I was always having to prove that I was Black enough, and that probably was a little bit out of my character, in the sense that I would try to overcompensate in certain things in my character to prove that whatever these people thought was Black. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And I feel like you getting bullied, like back then, it may have seemed like such a horrible thing, but seeing the person you are today and the love that you have for people, you know, all kinds of people, it's like God used that for His good, because you're so compassionate and you're good with all different types of people. So
yeah, it's a beautiful
blessing
thing.
in disguise. What is one of the hardest things you faced in life?
Well, I would honestly say the relationship that I mentioned earlier, just because that was my first taste of reality of being hurt, like, deeply. I actually spent 2 years with a group that goes out and tells our stories just in the performing arts way, to prove to young people that there are better choices.
And what's that group called?
It's called Epic Assemblies.
Epic Assemblies, awesome.
I know that you had Taylor a week or so ago, and that's how I met him. But when I was in that relationship, I actually lost my virginity at 18, and that was something that I had not planned on. But as I got away from my relationship with God and just got into this slowly but surely, like, doing things that I normally wouldn't do, and I got stuck in that relationship, and it was very depressing, and I don't know, it really sucked, because I was compassionate and towards always trying to see the good in people, and I think as a woman we always try to hold on to that when it's really not our job.
Exactly.
But you know, I wanted to help the little good in the bad boy or whatever, and one day I ended up at a doctor's appointment and found out that I had HPV amongst 2 other STDs, and I was really, really extremely distraught. Like I said, that was the first person that I was with, and I didn't understand. I had a lot of other friends that were sexually active for years, and I didn't think that it was fair. And I remember crying on the floor, you know, thinking, like, just why, you know? But that was really tough. But it also, I wouldn't take it back, because out of that has given me beautiful experiences and beautiful opportunities, and a miracle of God, because so I had left the church because I was hurt by the church, and there was a young lady who I actually kind of like mentored. She was on my dance team when I was at the church, and she kept bugging me to come back to church, and I was like, and finally one day I just decided to go, and I remember distinctly there was 2 young boys that were always knuckleheads, were up serving, and they were leading, and that just touched my heart in a different way, where yes, I was dealing with my own things, but more so I was sad that I missed out on their growth, because I've always had a heart for young people. And so that day, I rededicated my life to Christ, and I told the youth pastor, I think I was 19 at the time, what was going on with me, and he prayed over me, and he was like, he's like, God is a healer, and I believe that he's going to heal you. And long story short, I had been going to a homeopathic doctor, and they were giving me all this like different medicines and stuff like that, because for those of you that don't know, HPV is a virus that can lead to cervical cancer, and that's why women get pap smears every year. And I was at an abnormally high state, and I didn't have enough money to finish the treatment, and I didn't tell my parents because I didn't want to disappoint them, because they're like, my daughter, she's 18, she's a virgin, da, da, da. And so I was doing all of this by myself.
That had to be, I'm sorry to cut
no
you
problem.
off. There's probably so many other girls that are in that position that you are, maybe 18 and dealing with the same things, and they don't necessarily have someone to talk to. How did you deal with that? Like, that had to be a hard thing to feel like I have to keep this to myself. Would you encourage them to tell somebody?
Oh yeah. If I could have done it all over again, I definitely would have. I think I didn't give my parents enough credit. It sucks admitting your faults or admitting whatever's going on with you, but there's a lot more people that care about you than you ever know. And you never know the help that can be provided for you. Like, people can't help you if they don't know that you need help. Like, you have to be willing to say, yo, I need help, and that's it. That's it. You have to admit, where you're at.
Yeah.
And so, going back to the story, I didn't have enough money to finish the medicine, so they were basically saying, if this doesn't work, you're going to have surgery. And I forgot the correct terminology, but basically they would have cut part of my cervix out, which meant that I no longer would have had the ability to have children. Wow. And that was very, very, very hurtful, because I want kids,
That's traumatic. And you're 18, you're thinking, oh my God, like, my whole entire life can be transformed.
Off of this one relationship, And so that was before I had went back to the church, and long story short, I went back shortly after getting prayed over, and I was 100% normal, which means that was God. Like, there's no other explanation. Like, that's something that is not curable. I was at an abnormally high state. There's no other explanation but God. And that was the first time I witnessed a physical healing and a miracle like that. And it was just crazy. It was so crazy that...
And it's amazing, because that's the thing about God. It's like, he's powerful, and it was your faith too that healed you as well. There's stories in the Bible about people's faith healing them. The woman who was bleeding, and she believed in Jesus so much, she thought, if I touch him, I'll be healed. So it was your faith as well. Like, I see your posts, and I've heard you speak before, and I'm like, this girl has so much faith. If people knew that faith can cause them to be healed, there'd be so many more people having healing. So, but it's just amazing to see that the grace God has in us, and the grace that he had on you, and how he's using your story to help other people. It's amazing, and I'm just amazed that you feel comfortable with sharing this with people, because not a lot of people can do that. I think one of the words you should have said about yourself is brave, because for a person to pour out their heart and share this experience with other people, that's brave, and that's strength as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, Epic Assembly. So what do you do on that? I know you could do spoken word, you can sing, you can do all that stuff. What do you guys do? What do you do on there?
What I did was I was a dancer, I was an actor, and I was also part of the tech crew. So it's an amazing organization. I've grown so much from it, and it was the hardest and best thing I've ever done in my life. You really learn a whole lot. We are the people who set up the lighting and the video and everything, so you get a little bit of a workout, and then we put the whole entire show together. So everything that's in the show was created by us. So we spend basically a month together in the creative process, which is like 14, 16-hour days sometimes, just writing scripts or writing songs or learning dances and talking about how the show is going to come together. And then we spend like a week learning how to set up all the equipment, tear down, set up, tear down, set up. This is only the third year of the organization being around. It's part of a bigger organization called Breakdown International, but they're a touring version of Breakdown. And it's really super amazing to be able to spend, it's a pretty long time, it's a 9-month commitment.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time. With basically, there's 14 people on the team. So you're living with 13 other people 24/7 all the time.
What was that like? Like, that has to be stressful,
Yeah. It's like a hate-love thing, You definitely are going to get irritable, but you're also going to work other people's nerves, but you're also going to love like you've never loved before and really grow. Like, you can't not grow.
Yeah.
I know that wasn't correct grammar, but you're forced to grow being around these people. And we had great leaders, super great leaders, that taught us what it meant to be selfless and to serve. And whenever we would get on each other's nerves, we just remember that we were all there for the same purpose. Everyone was sharing their stories, and everyone was visiting these dark places of our lives in order to share the hope that if we can do it, so can other young people, And I think that's honestly where part of my confidence in sharing my story is now, because even when God healed me, I was very selective of sharing it. I'm like, God, you have to tell me, I have to know that you want me to talk to this person, because, hey, guess what, guys? I dealt with A, B, and C.
Yeah.
That's just awkward. But now, knowing that God healed me, knowing where I came from, I have no shame. That was me in the past. That's what I dealt with. That's not who I am. And, why be shameful of it? God is great, and it's a beautiful thing when I've had the opportunity to connect with young girls that have gone through the same thing. And one girl told me, if you could, would you take it back? And I said, what, honestly, at this point in my life, I can say, no, I wouldn't take it back. Because if I could, that means I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. And that was kind of like a moment where I understood, the whole, the beauty of, Christ, he did all those things so that we could know that it could be done in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it so much more to me. So
That's amazing. And I know you talked about how it was hard going back to church after you went through that. I bet there's a lot of people that are probably still dealing with that same thing, I shouldn't go to church, I'm dealing with this, or what does God think about me? What advice would you give them, maybe going through something or dealing with something that they might be ashamed of and they're shying away from God? What advice would you give them?
I would say that if Jesus were naked on the cross, and an image that we couldn't even imagine of a man, what room do we have to be shameful? If he did that, saying, yes, I would go through all of this for you because you're worth it, that's the God of love, you know what I mean? And he did it so that in your brokenness, you can have confidence that if you just say, Lord, here I am, he's gonna scoop you up, he doesn't care what you look like. If he did, he would have never sent Jesus, Jesus was talking about the Pharisees and all that in the Bible, and trying to look like this and say that, and that's not what it's about. He's no, it's about love, And so my advice to anyone that is dealing with anything that they are ashamed about is, number one, like, that's not of God, that's of the enemy, because God convicts you, he doesn't condemn you. Like, guilt is of the enemy. Conviction is from God. Conviction just means that you understand that something is wrong and that you need to change it. Guilt is just condemnation, saying that you're worthless, you know? And I think that that needs to be understood, that the enemy's doing that to keep you from your freedom.
Exactly.
He doesn't want you to be free. He wants you to stay in guilt. He wants you to be ashamed. He wants you to feel like you're never going to get past this. But you can, and you will. And all it does is take that one step of faith to say, this is where I'm at. This is all I have. I think about the woman, I'm pretty sure, was it the one with the issue of blood? She was like, she's like, all I gotta do is like just touch the brim of his cloak, you know. And in that time, in that era, like, women had no significance, you know. So they shouldn't be seen if they weren't called into it. They shouldn't speak. And she like forgot all that and was like, yo, I need Jesus. I'm just gonna at least touch this little part and I know I'll be healed. And she was willing to sacrifice that no matter what everybody else thought around her, you know. And Jesus didn't look at her like, why did you touch me? Like, he was like, no, like, you're healed. Your faith has made you whole, you know. So don't be afraid of your freedom is what I would say.
That was so good. Wow. I love that. Don't be afraid of your freedom. That's powerful.